This picture to the right is the picture of the Copper River Delta. It's in our backyard here in Cordova. It's the largest contiguous wetland on the Pacific coast of North America, comprising of 700,000 acres. And with that said, we have the Copper River Highway that transects it and basically acts as a dike for over roughly 400 miles, or not 400 miles, I'm sorry, about 40 miles. So we'll go into kind of some wetlands. Wetlands are lands where saturation with water is the dominant factor determining the nature of substrate development and the types of associated plant and animal communities. Wetlands are the most impacted land through development and agriculture purposes, as they are low-lying and easy to fill. And they are the most impacted by climate change. So here in Alaska, we are definitely wetland rich. A 1994 study showed that 43% of Alaska is classified as a wetland, where roughly 4% of the lower 48 is classified as wetlands. Here's a few pictures of some classification of wetlands. Hydrological characteristics such as water flow, water level, and seasonal flood patterns determine the physiochemical environment of a wetland, which in turn determines the biota present on that wetland, which determines the wetland classification. So we have salt marshes, open water ponds, shrub swamps, moist tussock tundra, sedge bogs, wet sedge, grass tundra and marshes, forested bogs, mossy, forested swamps. And so the wetland function is very dependent on these wetland classifications. Wetlands can receive, store, and release water in various ways, physically through groundwater and surface water, as well as biologically through vegetation. Wetlands are the natural connectors between terrestrial and aquatic systems and how nutrients are transferred between systems. And with this said, hydrology is the main driver of wetland characteristics and function. Biogeoco-Chemical Cycling involves the biological, physical, and chemical transformations of various nutrients within the biota, soils, water, and air. These processes are highly dynamic, involve complex interactions. We won't go too much into this, as we could spend days, but wetlands play a huge role in this cycling, particularly relating to nitrogen, sulfur, carbon, and phosphorus. They supply these elements to the surrounding ecosystems, as well as storing these elements for long periods of time in the soil, which influences the productivity of the surrounding ecosystem. These cycles rely on the oxygen and pH levels within the water. So if the system is put under any kind of stress, wetlands can actually release gases, such as hydrogen sulfide. Wetlands are capable of storing carbon in the sediment in the form of deteriorating organic substances. This storage technique allows wetlands to help decrease the greenhouse effect. The U.S. Global Change Research Program estimates that terrestrial wetlands in the lower 48 store a total of 13.5 billion metric tons of carbon. This study found that peatlands in the forested regions of the East and Upper Midwest store the most carbon, accounting for nearly half the wetland carbon in the United States. Wetlands also have a very important function to moderate flood flows and reduce downstream flood peaks, as well as moderate coastal storm surges. Some reports claim a single acre of wetland can hold up to 1 million gallons of water. And so studies show that flows are reduced 80% in watersheds with wetlands as opposed to those without them. They also are important long-term surface water storage to mitigate drought. They maintain base flows and contribute to groundwater recharge and maintain water tables. So just a diagram of the hydrological buffering on the bottom. Wetlands also are very important habitats for fish. They offer off-channel refuge during high flows, temperature refugia and habitat during low flows, bird habitat, amphibians, wildlife, invertebrates, maintain a very high degree of biodiversity. Connectivity influences fluxes between landscape elements, while isolation reduces flows between elements. Hydrologic connectivity is particularly significant since movement of chemical constituents and biota flows are often associated with water flow. Many wetland functions and their associated values depend on the connections among wetlands and between wetlands and adjacent aquatic and terrestrial systems. Connectivity also ensures gene flow among population, which increases genetic diversity and resilience to climate change and other environmental stressors. As hydrology underlies much of the ecological function of a wetland, maintaining hydrological connectivity is important. Here's a diagram of a free-flowing meandering river versus an embanked river. As you see on the bottom, the embanked river, as you get a decrease in water table, you have limited groundwater seepage. The side wetlands start becoming disconnected. So you have species specializations, a decrease in biodiversity. Whoops, sorry about that. And yep. Road crossing impacts. One of the main impacts is the disruption of hydrology, both the surface and subsurface groundwater flow. Poorly designed crossings can result in blockage of water flow through the wetland. So on the top left is actually from Alberta, Canada, a resource road. The photo on the left kind of shows it was a wetland kind of prior. The road disrupted that hydrology and then it became forested. A lot of time, and then on the right, the road impounds the water on the upstream side of the road, causing vegetation dieback. And then the other side of the road experiences a little bit more active tree growth. And on the bottom picture is actually out here on the delta, just kind of showing the same thing, impounding water on the upstream side, drying up the downstream side. And so with the disruption of connectivity, you get habitat fragmentation, becomes a gene flow barrier, and decreased biodiversity of species. It can also impact, roads also impact water quality, erosion, and sedimentation. Here's an example of a recent fish passage project here along the Copper River Highway, completed last year. The upper left picture shows kind of the system with its channel and off-channel connected wetlands. And then the other two photos is kind of showing the crossing. At the time, the engineer on the site, while during construction, there was much more drainage coming from the wetland to the left than anticipated. So the engineer on site came up with kind of this drainage plan to kind of berm it and to channelize water, and kind of he underestimated basically the wetland contribution to it. Wetlands provide unique structural challenges due to the poor bearing capacity of their soil. And we'll kind of, I think we'll go into that in the next couple of days under unique considerations. But here, kind of looking at this, these berms, kind of, there's been a kind of a net loss of connectivity within the wetland and the main channel. wasn't the best design. And actually, I think this summer we're going to go in there and remove those berms and reconnect the wetland to the main channel. And also looking at this, the kind of the overflow pipe on the left, the main pipe, if that were to be moved down the road to kind of more where that wetland channel is, probably would have been a better location for it, even though on the downstream side you'll see the trees. And if we had put that there, you know, we would have tree loss, and then public perception is, oh, you're killing the trees. But actually, you know, for flow dynamics, that probably would have been a better location for it. And here's just a picture of this crossing of the berms. You know, berms placed to control and direct wetland flow, but you know, in the end, it really leads to a loss of connectivity. We really need to keep these wetlands connected to the main channel and not just concentrate on trying to convey the water. So here we have, I have a picture of the stream evolution triangle introduced by Castro and Thorne. It kind of recognizes the influence of biology upon river form and process, and not just geology and hydrology, especially as most of these projects, the impetus is for biology, and we tend to kind of ignore that in river form and process. Most of us are familiar with the Lane's stream balance equation, captures the dynamic equilibrium between the amount of stream flow, the slope of the channel, and the amount and type of sediment, but it ignored biology. So this Castro and Thorne is kind of trying to incorporate biology into, you know, into this, and you know, realize its influence on the form and process. So now we'll go into the beaver. A species that has a profound influence on hydrology and river form and process is the beaver. They are the ecosystem engineer. They are a keystone species, meaning that they are a species on which other species in an ecosystem largely depend. So if they were to be removed, the ecosystem would drastically change.
2-minute warning there, Kirsti. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Multiple thread stream networks dominated the landscape throughout the Holocene. It wasn't until European settlement that they became single thread systems, mainly due to beaver eradication. This single thread system became our baseline for stream networks, and most modeling is based on this. We call it kind of the shifting baseline syndrome. So imagine walking across the system on the left and then walking across the system on the right. How many micro ecosystems of species will you encounter? The biodiversity on the right, of course, is through the roof compared to the system on the left. Through dam building, beavers create and maintain wetlands, increase floodplain connectivity, and transit single thread system into multiple thread systems. Beavers have a lot of impacts to the system hydrologically. They reduce downstream longitudinal connectivity through their dam building while increasing that lateral connectivity, inundating floodplains, creating riparian habitats, and creating wetland ecosystems. They increase surface water storage within ponds and their canals so they can mitigate drought. They elevate the water table. Quality, impacts to water quality, very much same as the wetlands. Ponds become large sediment and nutrient stores. They increase water availability and raise water tables, thus by improving stream temperatures. And then they increase interactions between riparian vegetation, impact upon biogeoco-chemical cycling and nutrient fluxes. And they can also help with erosion control because of the riparian habitats that are created. So the geomorphic impacts is the main one. There's a lot of words on this slide that you can read. The main thing is the sediment dynamics transition from a dominantly erosional system to a net depositional system. So that kind of changes your stream classification and your processes associated with that. They can also contribute to downstream sediment budgets through the excavation of canal networks and bank burrows, in addition to the release of sediment following down outburst floods and channel avulsion and head cutting when the channel is establishing new pathways in response to the dams and ponding. But still, they are still net depositional. And so then you'll have changes in channel plane form, longitudinal profiles, water surface and channel bed slope, increased sinuosity, which leads to channel elongation, and then enhanced floodplain connectivity and surface roughness. They also change the input of woody debris. They increase the rate of both large and small woody material contribution to the river system, thereby impacting the geomorphic complexity as well. So incised streams, it's kind of a sign of channel instability. It can be a result of channel straightening, such as channelization, flow increases from urban runoff, sediment load reductions, and what I will focus on is beaver eradication. As that erosion cuts a stream channel deeper and deeper into the ground, the surrounding water table also drops. Once the water table drops too low for the roots of nearby plants to reach, the lush vegetation dies off, resulting in a barren landscape. So without beaver dams to slow sink and store stream water, many streams become eroded, incised, and disconnected from their floodplain. So here we have just kind of showing you how a beaver can increase channel stability through these incised channels. It will build a dam in the incised channel, and then that will blow out, which will widen the trench, and then enables them to build more dams. Ponds rapidly fill, and then it promotes riparian growth, and this process keeps repeating until then you get kind of this multiple thread system and a high level of complexity. Of course, beavers and these beaver ponds create very diverse ecosystems for our many wildlife, amphibians, fish, and invertebrates. The dead trees are great for cavity nesting birds such as owls and woodpeckers. And then overwintering habitat for juvenile fish. Beaver ponds have been studied well. Here's just a graph from an Oregon study showing you that in the winter time how important they are. You know, the woody debris offers cover and food, and the ponds are thermal refuges and nutrient sinks that provide large amounts of fish food. A lot of people, you know, the controversy of the impacts on salmon, whether they can navigate the dams, and it's been well established that they can navigate the dams. Upstream movement may be reduced and or altered in a low gradient, low energy system, but because of their non-permanent nature, that movement maybe the next year or subsequent years will happen. There's also arguments of siltation of spawning beds, which happens, but they also are sediment traps. As a slide showed before, during a 2001 flood, 3 beaver dams in Russia trapped over 4,000 tons of solids. So that could have been making its way down to some spawning beds. There are the reintroduction of beavers and installing beaver dam analog structures are some ecological approaches to increasing channel stability and restoring degraded river systems, primarily through the aggradation of channel beds, leading to greater floodplain connectivity. So here's on the right, a picture of just some, trying to mimic what the beavers do. This slide I like. Before you reintroduce beavers, you have to kind of consider whether there's habitat. Obviously, the left picture doesn't have much vegetation, and so it doesn't have the habitat for beavers. So this was strictly just a revegetation project. They started replacing willows, and then with that, the beavers came afterwards once those willows established. And in 12 years, it transited from that top picture to the bottom picture. There are some implications of beavers moving into the Arctic. So, saying that, between the climate change fighters and climate change contributors, they're fighters in the sense that their ponds are this massive carbon storage, but also up in the north, as they migrate up there, they are degrading the permafrost and melting it. And so they become a contributor then to climate change. Lots of opinions on kind of what's going to happen with that migration northward as they establish themselves in the Arctic. Of course, the human beaver conflict has been going on for years. For road crossings, they love to dam up culverts. Here's a picture of a culvert along the Glen Highway, completely dammed up. And then of course the highway is having some road damage from lack of drainage under the road. So I won't, since we are running short on time, basically here's the full resources. This Beaver Institute, there's a lot of information stored here, not just on their value and importance to ecosystems, but offering a lot of solutions to working with them, a variety of beaver detractors and whatnot. And then, like I said, that stream evolution triangle, talking, trying to incorporate biology into hydrological functioning. And then the bottom paper is trying to, there's been an increasing push across northern Canada to treat wetland crossings the same as fish passage crossings, and the importance of maintaining hydrological connectivity to preserve that wetland function. And I think we'll be done. Sorry for going over time.